Story 1. The Unseen Guest in the Attic. It was Halloween weekend, and the air in the suburban neighborhood of Willow Creek carried the crisp bite of autumn. The year was special because Halloween fell on a Saturday, promising a day filled with costumes, candy, and the kind of revelry that only comes once a year. For 16-year-old Ethan Harper, Halloween was less about trick-or-treating and more about surviving his mother's obsession with outdoing the neighbors. Linda Harper was a woman possessed when it came to decorations, cobwebs draped across the porch, glowing jack-o'-lanterns lining the walkway, and a fog machine that churned out eerie mist. Their corner lot, perched at the intersection of Maple and Elm, was a beacon for every kid in town, or so Linda hoped. She saw it as a competition, a chance to cement her reputation as the Queen of Halloween. This year, however, the weather was uncooperative. Dark clouds loomed overhead, and the forecast warned of rain. By noon, the first trick-or-treaters braved the chilly wind, their costumes flapping as they scurried from house to house, but the turnout was disappointing. Ethan watched from the living room window as his mother's face fell with each passing hour. "It's the decorations," she muttered, pacing the kitchen. "They're not enough. The Thompsons across the street have that animatronic skeleton. We need more." Ethan rolled his eyes. "Mom, it's freezing out there. Kids aren't coming because it's about to pour, not because we don't have enough plastic spiders." But Linda was undeterred. "Go to the attic," she ordered, pointing toward the stairs. "There's another box of decorations up there. I know we've got those inflatable ghosts somewhere." Grumbling, Ethan trudged upstairs. The attic was a cramped, dusty space above his bedroom, accessible through a pull-down ladder in the hallway. He hated going up there. The air was stale, and the single flickering bulb cast long, unsettling shadows. As he climbed the creaking ladder, he felt a prickle of unease, though he chalked it up to the Halloween mood. The attic was organized, at least, with holiday bins neatly stacked. He found the Halloween section quickly, grabbing a plastic tote labeled Spooky Misc. Inside were tangled strings of orange lights and a couple of foam tombstones. "Good enough," he muttered, dragging the box toward the ladder. As he maneuvered the tote, a sharp crack echoed from the far corner of the attic. Ethan froze, his heart thudding. It sounded like wood splintering under weight, a noise that didn't belong in the stillness. He peered into the gloom, where a wall of cardboard boxes loomed. "Just the house settling," he told himself, but his voice sounded thin. The attic was old, after all, and strange noises weren't uncommon. Still, he hurried down the ladder, shoving the unsettling moment to the back of his mind. By evening, the rain had arrived, a steady drizzle that drove the last trick-or-treaters indoors. Linda's mood soured further as she stared at the untouched bowl of homemade goodie bags, each one stuffed with premium candy bars and glow sticks. "All this effort," she sighed, "and barely anyone showed up." Ethan felt a pang of sympathy. His mother lived for these moments, and the lackluster turnout stung. As night fell, Ethan retreated to his room, the storm outside escalating into a full-blown thunderstorm. Lightning flashed, illuminating his posters of classic horror movies. He settled in with his laptop, diving into an online game to drown out the howling wind. Around midnight, another crack sounded from above, sharper this time, unmistakable. Ethan paused his game, his pulse quickening. It wasn't the storm. The noise came from the attic directly overhead. He tried to dismiss it. Old houses creaked, especially in bad weather. But then it came again, a deliberate thud, like a heavy footstep. Ethan's mind raced. His parents were asleep, and no one else was home. He grabbed his phone, its glow casting eerie shadows on the walls, and crept into the hallway. The attic door was still closed, but as he stood there, another sound reached him, faint, muffled, like something being dragged across the floorboards above. Heart pounding, Ethan tiptoed downstairs to the kitchen, where he heard a new noise, the soft clink of glass. He froze, his breath catching. The fridge door was slightly ajar, its light spilling onto the tiles. Someone was in the house. His first thought was his mother, but when he peered down the hall and saw both his parents' bedroom door closed, dread coiled in his stomach. He slipped into their room, shaking his father awake. "Dad," he whispered, his voice trembling, "there's someone in the house. I heard them in the kitchen, and I think they're hiding in the attic." Mark Harper, a mild-mannered accountant, wasn't built for confrontation, but the fear in his son's eyes spurred him into action. He grabbed the police baton he kept under the bed, a precaution he'd never expected to use, and motioned for Ethan to stay back. Together they crept to the hallway, where Mark peeked toward the attic door. His face paled. "It's open," he whispered, "and I saw someone climb up there." They retreated to the bedroom, locking the door. Linda, now awake, clutched her phone as Mark dialed 911, his voice low but steady. The wait was agonizing. Every creak of the house felt like a threat. Every gust of wind a signal that the intruder was moving. Ethan's mind replayed the sounds from the attic. The crack, the thud, the dragging. Who was up there? And how long had they been in the house? When the police arrived, their flashlights cut through the rain-soaked darkness. Ethan's father opened the front door, revealing the attic door now closed, as if nothing had happened. The officers searched the house, their radios crackling. In the attic, behind a stack of boxes, they found him. A disheveled man in tattered clothes, clutching a jar of peanut butter and a stolen blanket. He didn't resist, his eyes weary but honest. "I didn't mean no harm," he said. "Saw the door open yesterday. Just needed a place to sleep." The police took him away, but the incident left Ethan shaken. His parents chose not to press charges, moved by the man's desperation, but Ethan couldn't shake the what-ifs. What if he'd gone back to the attic alone? What if the man hadn't been harmless? For weeks he avoided his room at night, the memory of those attic sounds haunting his dreams. Halloween, once a time of playful scares, had become something far more sinister. Story 2. The Skeleton at the Party. At 18, Jake Sullivan was no stranger to throwing parties, but the Halloween bash he planned at his parents' house was meant to be legendary. His parents, away for the weekend, had left strict rules. No strangers, and the house had to be spotless by their return. Jake promised a low-key gathering, but the stack of cash they left for snack suggested they knew better. By 6 p.m., the suburban house on Oakwood Drive was buzzing. A friend's older brother had set up DJ equipment in the backyard, and the first floor thrummed with music. 50 invited guests, friends from school and a few from the neighborhood, mingled under strings of orange lights, their costumes ranging from zombies to superheroes. Jake, dressed as a pirate, kept an eye on the crowd. He sipped a soda, determined to stay sharp as the host. The party was a hit, with laughter and dancing spilling into the backyard. But as the night wore on, the alcohol, smuggled in despite his no-drinking claim, loosened the vibe. By 10 p.m., the house was a chaotic blend of pulsing bass and drunken chatter. Around 11 o'clock, Jake's friend Ryan pulled him aside, his face uneasy. "Yo, who's the guy in the skeleton bodysuit? He was poking around the kitchen, acting weird." Jake frowned. He hadn't seen anyone in a skeleton costume. "You sure? Maybe it's just a random costume." Ryan shook his head. "Nah, man. He didn't look like he belonged, like he was snooping." Alarmed, Jake wove through the crowd to the kitchen, where a few friends were grabbing chips. "Anyone see a guy in a skeleton bodysuit?" he asked. A girl in a witch costume nodded. "Yeah, he was creeping around. Went upstairs, I think." Jake's stomach churned. The upstairs was off limits. His parents' room, his sister's room, and his own were private. He climbed the stairs, his boots heavy on the carpet. At the landing, he spotted a figure descending, a tall man in a black bodysuit, the skeleton pattern glowing faintly under the hall light. His face was hidden behind a skull mask, and his frame was broad, not like the lanky teens Jake knew. "Hey," Jake called, his voice firm. "Who are you?" The man paused, his head tilting. "Mike," he said, his voice deep, almost gravelly. "Just use the bathroom." Jake's eyes narrowed. "Who invited you?" "Tom," the man replied, brushing past Jake toward the front door. "Tom who?" Jake pressed, but the man didn't answer. He walked out, the door clicking shut behind him. Jake stood frozen, his mind racing. He didn't know any Tom. He ran upstairs, checking each room. His parents' bedroom door was ajar, but nothing seemed disturbed. His sister's room and his own were untouched. Relieved but uneasy, he locked the front door and rejoined the party, telling his friends about the strange encounter. No one knew the skeleton guy or anyone named Tom. By midnight, the party began to wind down. Most guests left, leaving a mess of cups and wrappers. Jake's close friends stayed to help clean, and by 1 a.m., the house was quiet. His friend Vinny crashed on the couch, while Jake's 14-year-old sister Lily slept upstairs. Exhausted, Jake brushed his teeth and changed, planning to crash. But he couldn't shake the image of the skeleton guy. Something about the man's calm demeanor felt off. He joined Vinny in the living room, where they watched YouTube videos, keeping the volume low to avoid waking Lily. Around 2 a.m., a faint creak came from upstairs. Jake tensed, assuming it was Lily heading to the bathroom. But the sound didn't stop. It was rhythmic, like footsteps pacing the hallway. He exchanged a glance with Vinny, who'd heard it too. "Is that your sister?" Vinny whispered. Jake shook his head. "Her door didn't open. I'd have heard it." He crept upstairs, his heart pounding. The hallway was dark, but the attic door was closed and Lily's door was shut tight. He knocked softly, then peeked inside. Lily was fast asleep, her breathing steady. Confused, Jake checked his parents' room. The door wasn't fully closed. It swung open with a gentle push, revealing darkness. He froze. He'd locked that door before the party. Backing out, he glanced through the crack of the closing door, and his blood ran cold. There in the shadows stood the skeleton bodysuit guy, his skull mask gleaming faintly. Jake's breath caught, but he forced himself to stay calm. He shut the door quietly, pretending he hadn't seen anything, and hurried downstairs. "Vinny," he hissed, "that guy's back." "He's in the house." Vinny's eyes widened. "Call the cops." Jake nodded, but first he had to get Lily. He tiptoed to her room, waking her gently. "There's someone in the house," he whispered. "Stay quiet and follow me." Lily, bleary-eyed but sensing his fear, nodded. They crept downstairs, meeting Vinny in the kitchen. Together they slipped out the back door, cutting through the yard to the neighbor's house. Jake rang the bell frantically until Mr. Carlson, a gruff retiree, let them in. The police arrived minutes later, but the intruder was gone. They found the parents' bedroom window open, the closet door ajar. Jake's father's safe, bolted to the floor, was untouched, but scratches around it suggested someone had tried to pry it loose. The police speculated the man had slipped in during the party, possibly someone who knew about the safe. But no one was ever caught. Jake never threw another party. The memory of that skull mass staring from the shadows lingered like a ghost. He wondered who the man was, someone older, someone who knew too much. Halloween for Jake would never be the same. Story 3: The Clown in the Shadows. In 2016, 15-year-old Noah Bennett was determined to make his final year of trick-or-treating unforgettable. Growing up in the quiet town of Cedar Hollow, Halloween was a sacred tradition, and Noah's mother, Sarah, was famously laid back. She'd turned the holiday into a multi-day extravaganza, complete with a sleepover the night before, a day of skipping school, and a grand trick-or-treating adventure with friends. This year, Noah planned to cap it off with a sleepover with his girlfriend Amber in the newly renovated basement man cave. A sprawling room with a bar, a big screen TV, and a vibe perfect for spooky movie marathons. The night before Halloween, Noah and his friends Davis and Zach descended into the basement, armed with snacks and a stack of horror DVDs. The basement hallway, long and narrow, was pitch black, its light switch broken. It gave the space a creepy edge, which suited their mood. Sarah had baked cookies, and the boys settled in, starting with Scream. By 11 p.m., they switched to Paranormal Activity, a film none of them had seen. The grainy footage and eerie silence set the perfect tone until the backyard motion light flared on, flooding the room with harsh white light. Noah groaned, pausing the movie. "Stupid sensor," he muttered. The light timed out after 30 seconds, and he resumed the film. But moments later, it flicked on again. Then again. Annoyed, Noah turned to his friends. "What's triggering that thing?" Davis shrugged. "Maybe a raccoon?" The light went off, then on again. Noah's irritation turned to curiosity. "Let's check it out," he said, leading the way upstairs. By the time they reached the back door, the light had timed out, leaving the yard in darkness. They stood there for 5 minutes, scanning the shadows, but saw nothing. Unsettled but dismissing it as a glitch, they returned to the basement, abandoning the movie for phone scrolling and chatter. By 2 a.m., Davis and Zach were asleep, but Noah was still awake, browsing Reddit when the motion light blazed on again. He sighed, too tired to care. It was probably kids pulling a prank. Halloween brought out the mischief in Cedar Hollow. But as he lay there, a nagging doubt crept in. The light wasn't random. Something was out there, moving just beyond sight. He considered checking again, but decided against it, drifting into an uneasy sleep. The next day was a whirlwind. Noah, Davis, and Zach hit the streets, their pillowcases heavy with candy by dusk. Noah felt a bittersweet pang. This was the end of a childhood ritual. As they approached their final houses, Amber, who joined them, suddenly yelped, clutching her arm. "Someone threw a rock at me," she cried. Noah spun around, his eyes locking on a figure 15 feet away, a man in a clown mask, standing motionless under a streetlight. The 2016 clown epidemic had made headlines, and Cedar Hollow hadn't escaped the hysteria. The man's mask was garish, but his clothes were ordinary. Jeans and a hoodie, no costume flair. He looked like an adult, not a teen pulling a prank. "Get lost!" Noah shouted, stepping protectively in front of Amber. The man didn't move, his masked face unreadable. Noah's bravado faltered. "Let's go," he muttered, leading his friends away. The clown remained still, watching them disappear around the corner. They skipped the last houses, nerves frayed, and returned to Noah's house. That night, it was just Noah and Amber in the basement, sorting candy on the floor. Amber suggested a movie, and Noah, still rattled but not wanting to scare her, chose Paranormal Activity again. They curled up on the couch, the dim lights casting long shadows. Halfway through a tense scene, the screen went black, and the basement lights shut off. The room plunged into darkness. Noah's heart raced. "Power's out," he said, trying to sound calm. Amber's eyes were wide with fear. He checked his phone. No storm warnings, just clear skies. The house had a generator in the backyard, but the thought of going out there, after the clown and the motion light, made his skin crawl. "I'm checking the generator," he said, grabbing a flashlight. Amber refused to stay alone, so they crept upstairs together. The backyard was silent, the crickets chirping unnaturally loud. As they passed the motion sensor, it didn't trigger, a bad sign. Noah's stomach twisted as they neared the generator. A twig snapped in the distance, and they froze, staring toward the wooded edge of the yard. The darkness felt alive, watching them. "Let's go back inside," Noah whispered, his voice tight. Amber was already moving, but as Noah turned, he saw him, the clown-masked man standing beside the shed. His mask gleamed in the moonlight, and for a moment, they locked eyes. Then the man lunged, sprinting toward them. Noah and Amber bolted for the back door, slamming it shut behind them. They raced to the basement, hiding behind the bar. Noah's heart sank as he realized he hadn't locked the door. A loud slam echoed from upstairs, the back door. Silence followed, heavy and oppressive. Amber, trembling, texted 911, her fingers shaking as she described the intruder. Minutes dragged like hours. Then came the sound Noah feared most, the basement door creaking open. Footsteps descended, slow and deliberate, moving down the hallway. Amber's breathing was too loud. Noah gently covered her mouth, his own pulse deafening. The footsteps stopped just outside the man cave. Noah gripped a beer bottle, his mind racing. If the man found them, he'd have to fight. The room was silent, the tension suffocating. Then faintly, sirens wailed outside. The footsteps hesitated, and Noah seized the moment. He leapt up, swinging the bottle at the figure in the doorway. His foot caught on a rug, and he fell, the bottle grazing the man's mask. The clown barely flinched, his eyes glinting through the mask holes. For a moment, Noah thought it was over, but the sirens grew louder, and the man turned, sprinting upstairs. The back door slammed again. Noah scrambled to his feet, racing upstairs to let the police in. He pointed them to the backyard, but the man was gone, vanished into the woods. The police searched but found no trace. Noah and Amber were shaken. The image of that clown mask burned into their minds. The basement, once a haven, felt tainted. Noah avoided it for months, and even years later, the memory of that night, those staring eyes, that silent pursuit made his blood run cold.